Welcome to COVID Comms episode 22, and today we're asking what the crap. During the week, I recorded a conversation with a behavioural economist and good friend of mine, Phil Slade, and we were discussing the psychology behind the irrational stockpiling of toilet paper that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. I'm sure you'll find this as interesting as I did. Well, hey, Phil, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Why don't we start out by you just letting us know who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Phil Slade. I am a behavioural economist and registered psychologist. I co-founded Decida with two other founders, and we look at decision making at an individual level, and then how that expands out to a corporate level, but bottom-up decision making, and looking at improving people's decision making, driven by the core narrative that if everyone on the planet starts to make better decisions, we're going to solve most of the political, social, and environmental problems that we face. I also, with another hat, as a behavioural economist, work in the behavioural insights team with Suncorp, and so have a dual hat, wearing cape or process, I suppose, is a best way to put it, but that keeps life interesting as well.
Awesome. Yeah, look, I love every time that I speak to you because there's so much experience and knowledge in that behavioral economics and insight space. I often learn so much coming away from those conversations. But hey, this conversation, I really want to explore some of the stockpiling behavior that we've seen at the beginning of this COVID crisis. There's been some crazy irrational stuff going on, particularly around toilet paper. What is going on there, Phil?
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about that it's a mechanism of when you lose control, that you're able to control the purchasing of something. But what that tends to not explain is why toilet paper, right? Or why. So that is true. But going a bit deeper on that, I think people have got to remember that we're herd animals, right? And so if you think of a herd of antelope, when they are under threat by a lion, the ones that are left behind, the slowest ones, the ones that are on the extremities of the pack, they're the most exposed. And I suppose from over time, we've learned that when you're under threat, moving as a pack is important. And so when you see the pack or the herd going and starting to freak out about toilet paper, there's this innate desire in all of us to go and do that because the herd's doing that, and we don't want to get left behind from the herd, because if you get left behind, that means we're more exposed, and the last thing you want to feel in a time of crisis is more exposed. So we end up, and even the people that, were sort of, oh yeah, I didn't get caught up in the toilet paper crisis. I guarantee you that as you walk down the aisle and you saw that one roll of toilet paper, that you would have been tempted just to pick it up just in case, whether you needed it or not, right? Or at least felt the ire of others when you actually needed toilet paper and went down to the shop to buy toilet paper, and you were hypersensitive to what other people thought. You would never be sensitive to what other people were looking at you if you, in any normal toilet paper buying situation. So they're all herd instinct behaviors. And I think that's something where it just happened to toilet paper. Like, insert other irrelevant item here. What we're seeing is a herd behavior, and our herd instinct is driving us to act with and along with the herd in order to not feel even more exposed than we already do with the loss of control. I think the other sort of interesting point here is that when you buy something like toilet paper, when you exercise that control to buy a roll of toilet paper because you can, and you overbuy, there's a little bit inside of us that goes, I don't want to be the one left behind, looked down upon. We like to think, there's all these other people that can't get toilet paper now, but I'm super smart. I've got my toilet paper. I wasn't the one. I wasn't the shilly schmuck who's now sitting there freaking out about toilet paper, and it gives us a downward comparison. And as we know, psychology we know that downwards comparison makes us feel good, and so couple that with the herd instinct and the loss of control. It's kind of this perfect storm of herd behavior in order for us to A, not feel more exposed and feel more pain, but B, also try to feel good about something, and it actually gives us this little rush of goodness when we are able to buy something and go, at least I'm not the one that gets left behind, and gives us a downward comparison. It's like, no matter how bad things get for us, we're not as bad as Joe Schmuck who hasn't got their toilet paper.
Yeah, no, that's right. So really around that, doing what everyone else is doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's really the underpinning mechanism of kind of the social proof, right? Is that
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's also I want to feel good in this, turbulent time, and that's all pulling in. It's interesting that so many people are describing it as irrational behavior, but then engaging in it in some form themselves.
Well, I mean, it isn't
kind of driving that.
Well, it isn't rational behavior, but it would be a mistake for you to think that you're driven by your rational self, right? It's actually rational to be driven irrationally, if that makes sense. Behavioral economics is all split up on the idea that you've got two systems of processing information: a more rational, conscious planning side of yourself, and a more emotional, more instinctive, more automatic learned behaviors part of yourself. It's that when under threat and you feel a bit of panic, it's that survival mechanism that kicks in, and we rely on that automatic behavior in order for us to survive. So it makes sense that we will do things that in hindsight don't seem that logical, but at the time, like I said, if it's not toilet paper, the same herd instinct helps us stay inside and practice social distancing. It's the same herd instinct that works for us when we want to go to the shop and stand on the X marks the spot, and get a little bit terse at somebody who doesn't follow the rules, right? In Australia, we're rule followers, but it's the same mechanism. So if you look at the mechanism behind it, it's not as irrational. If you just look at the outcome, then it becomes irrational. But there's a fallacy in focusing too much on the outcomes of decisions to judge whether that decision is right or wrong. It's kind of like if back when we had football and somebody had the choice of whether to pass the ball or go for the try. If they don't pass the ball and go for the try, then that was a good decision. But if they don't pass the ball and happen to get tackled, then that wasn't. So we use the outcome as a way of judging the decision, which isn't necessarily the right way to do it. Like, they may have actually played the odds and just ran out at the time. So I think by looking at toilet paper and then judging that was a terrible decision without looking at the mechanism that's driving it, I think that's probably the irrational bit from my point of view.
Yeah, great. And it happens so often, I find, in today's society, is we only look at outcome. We don't look at the process that contributes to it. And as you said, that's that's the rational thing to do. I'm just interested, drawing on your expertise and really the both system 1 and system 2 thinking, and what are some novel ways for people to make better decisions in the current environment?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to obviously, and we hear this quite a lot, control the controllables. So what can you control? You can control your exercise, you can control your diet, you can control what you watch on TV, you can control how you use your time, you can control what you do with your family as they're around, and take advantage of the fact that you've got extra family time, right? They're the things that you can control. So focus on that, and get energy from being able to control those things. And I think that's probably one of the key things to focus on. It's about that creation of energy and the expenditure of energy. So if you're an extrovert and you get energy from being around people, then when you're on the phone, for instance, make sure that you really do have the video on all the time. The introverts sort of don't understand why that's important. They go, oh, we're on the phone, who cares? But for an extrovert, it takes a lot more energy to receive information just through the phone all day. They'll just get exhausted. By the end of the day, they will be stuffed and they will feel like they've done nothing because they've just been on the phone all day, but their mental faculties have just been drained. Whereas if you just do it by video, you'll actually find that whilst your productivity maybe doesn't increase because of the conversation you've had, you've got more energy at the end of the day. Like this, let's say I have an extrovert will work with an introvert, you just need to know that sometimes you need that, not only that alone time, but that extended one-on-one conversation with people every now and then just to get your energy and kick up. I think there's definitely something around just saying, when you're wanting to go and do something that's out of your control. So, to going to the shops and you're wanting to spend, or you may be spending irrationally. I think there's a lot of studies showing an increase at the moment in gambling activity, because particularly for people that have also lost their jobs or have a downturn in work at this time, they're feeling loss at the same time that they're feeling uncertain. And so this is classic loss aversion. So if you've already lost something, you're more likely to gamble with either your finances or your life in order to make up for that loss, not just loss of physical cash and finance or resources, but also the loss of interconnection and relationships, or the loss of way of working. In uncertainty, you're more likely to go, maybe I'll go and have a flutter on the horses, and then all of a sudden you've just lost, a couple of $1,000s, and you may never have done that in the past. It doesn't really make sense. So I would say, make sure that you steer clear of some of those habits if you're not already, sort of a habitual horse race punter and know how to control that. I wouldn't get into it. Now is not the time to get into those sorts of things. I would argue there's no real time to get into those sorts of things, but that's more of a personal thing. So I think making sure that you say, and in those times when you're trying to spend, when you're looking at irrational spending, just ask yourself a question in that moment to say, am I reacting or responding right now? Am I doing this am I going, I've just lost my job, stuff it, we're going to go have a 5-star, meal that we're going to get delivered and go get, a great bottle of champagne to stick it because it's going to make you feel good. And ask yourself, am I reacting or responding right now? Will actually help just inhibit some of those behaviors. It's not that those things are wrong or right. This is not about wrong or right. This is about better decisions for you. And I think finally, think about the different spheres of your life. So every decision that you make is basically couched in either your family and social relationships, your resources, so the finances that you how you attract finances to, or investments, etc., your resources, or your health, that being mental, physical, or spiritual. You don't make a decision outside one of those three areas. And balancing those three areas is really crucial, right? So focusing too much on your health at the expense of financial resources and family isn't great, or vice versa. And then couching that and being able to really look at your values and going, how do you align each of those areas to what's important to you, what you value in life? I think this is the perfect time to actually sit down and have those moments of reflection, and do things like a daily diary. I think this is a habit. There are a number of habits that I think we can start to create in this time that are actually going to stand us in good when life does return to a version of normality, or whatever it will turn into, and we'll be able to take those habits, because you can say, what are the things that I want to return to from what are the things that I don't? And what are the things that I've learned in this new environment that I want to bring to that? And what are the things that I'm quite happy to leave behind? And it sets up that sort of conversation. It changes the focus from the loss of what we didn't have to, okay, how do we reconstruct the future? This is this transition through the grieving process where we can grieve the loss of what was, but then actually start to reconstruct what the future could be.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, Phil. And, it's great to see that your explanation of what's going on and people's experiences right now, in many ways echoing the same messages that I'm putting out at the moment. One of the phrases that I've been saying is consistency builds stability in turbulent times. And you're talking about the habits there, and obviously looking after your foundations, being exercise, nutrition, sleep. They're all going to lead to better cognitive performance, which means better decision making, and therefore better leadership and performance through turbulent times. Hey, there is so much. I'd love to delve deeper into a lot of the stuff that we've spoken about this afternoon. We might do this interview thing more again at some point in the future. But if people are really interested,
absolutely,
hearing more, learning more about you and what you do and Decida, where can they find you?
Look, LinkedIn's always a good place to start, but crack on to decida.co, that's DECIDA, and you can find a whole lot of resources there, ways to contact us.
Not .com, .co.
.co, not .com. We just thought we'd be nice and different and creative there for a second. But yeah, there's ways to get on there. Check out some of the tools and just drop us a line. We're always open for a chat, and yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Phil. We might leave it there.
Great. Always great chatting, Cliff.
If you enjoyed that as much as I did, tell me what stood out to you the most. Put it in the comments box below. We'll have more COVID comms coming soon, so stay tuned. And until then, lead well.